Close your eyes and let us travel back in time to a land of rolling green hills, quiet villages, and stone castles standing proudly against the horizon. This is England, in the age we now call medieval. A time of kings and queens, knights and peasants, of whispered tales in candlelit rooms, and the gentle rhythm of life guided by seasons and faith. Picture, if you will, the land of England as it was more than 1,000 years ago. The Roman legions had departed, leaving behind silent roads, crumbling forts, and scattered villages. The once grand villas and bathhouses stood empty, their stone walls slowly surrendering to ivy and the creeping touch of nature. The organized structure of the Roman Empire, with its governors, soldiers, and clear lines of authority, was gone. In its place was a land waking from a long slumber, a land feeling its way toward a new identity. England, at this time, was not a single country but a tapestry of kingdoms, each with its own king, laws, and customs. Imagine the rolling hills, thick forests, and winding rivers, where deer moved quietly through the undergrowth. Birds flitted from branch to branch, and the wind whispered across the fields of wheat and barley. This was a land where life was closely intertwined with the rhythms of nature. People rose with the sun, tended their animals, sowed seeds, and prepared for a day that demanded both endurance and care. The first waves of change came from across the seas, from the lowlands of what we now call Denmark, Germany, and the northern regions of Europe. Small tribes began to arrive. The Angles, the Saxons, and the Jutes crossed the waters in sturdy wooden ships. They were not vast armies like the Romans, but small, determined groups seeking new lands to farm, new forests to claim, and new rivers to settle along. They came with axes, spears, and courage, ready to carve out a life in a land that was both wild and waiting. The early Anglo-Saxon settlements were simple yet purposeful. Wooden homes with walls of woven reeds and thatched roofs dotted the landscape. Smoke rose gently from the chimneys, curling into the morning mist. Villagers worked side by side, tending to crops and animals, their days marked by the slow, steady rhythm of survival. The communities were small, close, knit, and deeply connected to the land. Life in these settlements was demanding, but it was also full of quiet beauty. Imagine a child running barefoot across dew-kissed grass, the morning sun warming their face. Farmers bent over fields of barley and wheat, feeling the soil crumble softly beneath their fingers. The sound of a nearby stream gurgling over smooth stones accompanied the hum of daily labor. And in the evenings, families gathered around a fire, sharing stories of ancestors, of heroes, of gods and spirits who shaped their world. The Anglo-Saxons brought with them not only their weapons and tools, but also their language, their myths, and their customs. They worshipped many gods, some associated with war, others with fertility, the harvest, or the sun and moon. The sky itself seemed alive to them, and every rustle in the forest, every howl of a wolf, every flash of lightning was a sign of powers greater than themselves. Over time, Christianity began to spread, first through missionaries who traveled long distances, carrying with them sacred texts, crosses, and the gentle message of a different kind of faith. The kingdom structure slowly evolved. There was Wessex in the south, Mercia in the central regions, Northumbria to the north, and smaller kingdoms like East Anglia, Kent, and Sussex. Each kingdom had its own king, its own council of elders, and its own code of law. Alliances were forged, broken, and reforged, often through marriage, tribute, or the occasional battle. Kings were warriors and rulers, but they were also caretakers of their people, responsible for ensuring that the harvests were sufficient, that trade flowed, and that justice was served. Monasteries became a central pillar of this new society. Picture stone abbeys rising quietly among the green hills, their walls thick and enduring. Monks lived within these walls, devoting their lives to prayer, to learning, and to preserving knowledge. By candlelight, they meticulously copied manuscripts, preserving not only Christian texts, but also fragments of Roman and Greek wisdom, poetry, and philosophy. The rhythmic scratching of quills on parchment, the soft chanting of prayers, and the serene hush of these halls created an atmosphere of calm and reflection in a world otherwise marked by uncertainty. These monasteries were more than centers of faith. They were centers of culture, education, and even medicine. Herbs were grown in careful gardens, remedies prepared with knowledge passed down through generations. Travelers seeking guidance, knowledge, or shelter found it within the abbey walls. The monks' devotion shaped not only spiritual life, but also the intellectual and social landscape of early medieval England. Life for the common folk was both arduous and deeply communal. Villagers shared in celebrations and hardships alike. Imagine harvest festivals where people danced and sang, their faces glowing by torchlight. Imagine winter nights where families huddled together for warmth, telling stories that had been passed down through generations, stories of kings and battles, of mystical creatures, and of the land itself. Every season brought a new rhythm to life, sowing in the spring, tending in the summer, harvesting in the autumn, and enduring the cold stillness of winter. Trade slowly developed, connecting communities to each other. Local markets grew, with merchants bringing pottery, tools, and cloth from distant regions. Simple crafts like weaving, blacksmithing, and woodworking became highly valued. Even in small villages, the exchange of goods and ideas wove a sense of connection across the patchwork of kingdoms. Though the period is sometimes called the Dark Ages, there was light in many forms, the beauty of nature, the resilience of communities, the spark of learning in monastic schools, and the richness of oral traditions all flourished. Bards and storytellers wandered from village to village, their songs carrying tales of heroes like Beowulf, preserving not only entertainment, but also the moral and cultural values of the time. The Anglo-Saxon kings gradually consolidated power, creating the foundations of what would later become a united England. Kings like Alfred of Wessex, who came slightly later, would champion education, law, and defense, leaving a legacy that would shape the medieval world. But even before Alfred, the kings and their people laid the groundwork for society, structured governance, codified laws, and a sense of identity rooted in the land. The land itself seemed alive with history. Forests held secrets. Ancient burial mounds marked the resting places of forgotten kings, and rivers traced paths that connected communities in ways both practical and symbolic. Life was measured not in wealth or conquest alone, but in the small victories, a successful harvest, the birth of a child, the quiet continuity of family and tradition. In this early medieval period, the seeds of England's identity were being planted. A tapestry of languages, beliefs, and customs began to emerge, woven together by struggle, adaptation, and resilience. And while the future would bring Viking invasions, Norman conquests, and countless upheavals, this era remained the quiet, enduring foundation, a world of misty mornings, flickering hearths, and the steady heartbeat of life in the villages, forests, and hills of early medieval England. As the sun rises over these gentle landscapes, the world is both familiar and foreign. We can hear the distant clang of a blacksmith's hammer, the laughter of children playing by a stream, and the solemn toll of a bell from a nearby monastery. Every stone, every tree, every small village holds a story of people shaping their world, of life and death, hope and perseverance. And as we leave this first chapter of our journey through medieval England, let us pause to feel the quiet strength of these early centuries. Let us remember that even in times of uncertainty, humans create, build, and dream, and let us carry the image of this world, a land of misty hills, whispering forests, and enduring villages, with us as we move forward toward the Viking Age and the next chapter of history. Picture the coastline of England as it was more than 1,000 years ago. Mist rolled across the shore, curling around cliffs and over sandy beaches. The air smelled of salt and seaweed, and the waves lapped quietly against the rocks, as though whispering secrets of lands far beyond the horizon. From across the North Sea, long, sleek ships with dragon-headed prows glided silently through the early morning fog. These were the vessels of the Vikings, fierce warriors and explorers from the lands we now call Norway, Denmark, and Sweden. The Vikings did not arrive in a single wave, but in countless small groups, each driven by curiosity, ambition, or the pressing need for land and resources. They were skilled sailors, navigating treacherous seas with remarkable precision. Imagine standing on the deck of one of their ships, the cold spray of the ocean stinging your cheeks, the wind tugging at your cloak, and the rhythmic creak of the wooden hull beneath your feet. Every man and woman aboard knew that life was uncertain, that the next wave could carry them to glory or to danger. Their first encounters with the English were sudden and terrifying. Villages along the coast, often small clusters of timber homes, were vulnerable to the swift attacks of Viking raiders. The air would fill with the cries of alarm as villagers rushed to defend themselves, the clash of axes and shields ringing across the landscape. Yet the Vikings were not merely destroyers. They were also traders, settlers, and farmers. Over time, some came not to raid but to build, integrating themselves into the land they once threatened. York, known then as Eoforwic, became a hub of Viking activity. It was a bustling town, alive with the sounds of merchants calling out their wares, the clatter of carts over cobblestones, and the creaking of ship masts in the harbor. Here, cultures collided and mingled. Anglo-Saxon traditions met Norse customs, and languages intertwined, giving birth to new dialects and ways of life. Imagine walking through these streets, the smell of fresh bread from small bakeries mingling with the scent of salt from the nearby river, children laughing as they chased each other through narrow alleys, craftsmen hammering iron into tools and weapons, monks quietly tending to their manuscripts. In hidden corners, life under Viking influence was both dynamic and uncertain. Kings and local lords had to navigate the constant threat of raids while maintaining order and justice within their realms. The Danish controlled regions, known as the Danelaw, stretched across much of eastern and northern England. Here, Norse law prevailed, creating a fascinating patchwork of governance across the country. Local rulers adapted, negotiated, and sometimes intermarried with Viking leaders, blending traditions and creating a fragile balance between cooperation and conflict. Amid the chaos of raids and warfare, some of the most remarkable cultural and intellectual exchanges occurred. Vikings were not merely warriors, they were skilled artisans, traders, and explorers. They brought new tools, techniques, and ideas, enriching the daily life of those they settled among. Weapons were crafted with precision, jewelry adorned with intricate knotwork and designs told stories of gods and heroes, and runic inscriptions recorded events and beliefs for future generations. Imagine, for a moment, a quiet evening in a Viking settlement. The sun sets over a serene river, casting golden light over wooden homes. Smoke rises from small hearths as families cook their evening meals. A mother weaves cloth at her loom while her children play nearby, and a father sharpens his axe in preparation for the work ahead. In the distance, the sound of a blacksmith's hammer echoes across the water, mingling with the soft strumming of a lyre as a bard sings of faraway lands and daring adventures. Religion and spirituality played an important role during this period. Vikings worshipped gods such as Odin, Thor, and Freyja, each associated with specific aspects of life and the natural world. Sacred groves and small temples dotted the countryside, where offerings were made to secure protection, prosperity, or victory in battle. Christianity continued to spread throughout England, sometimes peacefully and sometimes through conflict, creating a landscape where multiple belief systems coexisted, clashing and blending in fascinating ways. Among the Anglo-Saxons, life was also evolving. Leaders like Alfred the Great, King of Wessex, recognized the threat of the Viking presence and took measures to protect their people. Alfred was not only a military strategist, but also a patron of education and learning. He established fortified towns known as burhs along key routes to defend against raids. He encouraged the translation of important texts from Latin into the vernacular, ensuring that knowledge was preserved and accessible. Imagine Alfred walking through one of these towns, soldiers drilling in the dusty streets, merchants tending to their stalls, and scholars quietly studying under the dim light of oil lamps in small stone buildings. The interaction between Vikings and Anglo-Saxons was complex. While there were violent conflicts, there were also alliances, marriages, and cultural exchange. Trade flourished in some areas, with goods such as wool, grain, furs, and precious metals traveling along rivers and roads connecting the communities. Craftsmen learned new techniques, and ideas spread across the land like ripples on water. Over time, this interplay of cultures shaped the identity of England, blending Norse and Anglo-Saxon traditions into something uniquely English. The Viking Age also brought innovations in navigation, warfare, and governance. Longships allowed for unprecedented mobility along rivers and across seas, enabling swift attacks or the transport of goods. Warriors were disciplined, often organized in tightly knit groups that relied on both skill and courage. Laws were codified in ways that influenced English legal traditions, particularly in areas under Danelaw control. Despite the turbulence, there were moments of extraordinary peace and beauty. Picture a winter evening with snow gently covering the rooftops of a small village. Smoke curls from chimneys and families gather by the fire, sharing stories and songs. Children drift to sleep as parents quietly discuss the plans for the coming harvest. Outside, the river reflects the moonlight, and the soft cry of an owl echoes from the nearby forest. In such moments, life feels fragile yet enduring, a delicate balance between human endeavor and the vast, untamed world around them. The legacy of the Viking Age extended beyond immediate conflicts. It shaped trade networks, introduced new cultural practices, and left an enduring mark on the English language. Place names like Grimsby, Whitby, and Derby remind us of Norse influence, while family names, folklore, and legends carry echoes of a time when the seas connected distant lands and adventurous hearts sought fortune and home alike. By the 11th century, the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms had adapted, resisting some invasions while incorporating others. Alfred's descendants continued to consolidate power, gradually laying the groundwork for a unified English kingdom. Yet the memory of Viking raids, the mingling of cultures, and the stories of bravery and survival remained vivid in the hearts of the people. Imagine walking through a peaceful village at dusk. Children play along the riverbanks, laughter ringing softly in the air. Traders pack up their goods after a long day, while farmers tend the last of the crops under a fading sun. Monks chant prayers in a nearby abbey, their voices rising and falling like the tides. The ghosts of the past linger in the shadows, the ships that once roared into the harbors, the warriors who fought on distant fields. But life continues, resilient and enduring. The Viking Age, with all its violence, exploration, and cultural blending, was a time of transformation. It challenged communities, reshaped societies, and expanded the horizons of those who lived through it. And yet, amid the raids and battles, there were moments of quiet continuity. families gathering by the hearth, scholars preserving knowledge, artisans crafting beauty from wood and metal, and communities celebrating the simple joys of daily life. As we leave this chapter of our journey, let us pause to feel the rhythm of this era, the ebb and flow of fear and hope, the clash of swords and the quiet of evening fires, the unending sea that brought both danger and opportunity. The Viking Age reminds us that history is never simple. It is a tapestry woven from courage and creativity, conflict and coexistence, survival and imagination. And as we move forward into the next chapter of medieval England, the Norman Conquest, we carry with us the echoes of the North Sea, the whispers of misty coastlines, and the enduring spirit of those who lived, fought, and dreamed during the Viking Age. Imagine the land of England in the year 1066. Rolling hills stretch as far as the eye can see, dotted with small villages and meandering rivers that reflect the pale light of dawn. Smoke rises gently from chimneys, curling into the soft morning mist, while shepherds guide their flocks across dew-kissed pastures. Life continues its quiet rhythm, yet beneath this serene surface, the winds of change are gathering, carrying whispers of distant lands and the rumble of armies yet to arrive. This year, 1066, would become one of the most famous in English history. It was a year of kings, of warriors, of battles that would shape the nation forever. At the heart of it all is a man named Harold Godwinson, King of England. Harold is a strong and capable leader, yet his rule is challenged by claims from afar. Across the English Channel, William, Duke of Normandy, looks toward England with ambition in his eyes. He believes the crown is his by right, and he is determined to claim it, no matter the cost. Imagine the morning mist on the coast of Normandy. Longships rest in the harbor, their dragon-headed prows cutting clean lines against the water. Soldiers sharpen their swords, polish their armor, and prepare their banners. William, calm and resolute, walks among his men. Every gesture, every word, inspires loyalty and courage. The ships are laden with not only warriors, but also horses, supplies, and the tools of siege warfare. Each vessel is carefully constructed, designed to sail across treacherous seas and bring men to a new land where destiny awaits. Meanwhile, across the Channel in England, King Harold prepares for the unknown. The kingdom is prosperous, yet tensions simmer. Local lords raise their levies, peasants tend their fields, and the people pray for peace. Harold's mind is heavy with responsibility. He knows that his kingdom faces threats not only from the Normans, but also from other challengers in the north. He gathers his forces, inspects the fortifications, and calls upon every able-bodied man to stand ready. And then the fateful moment arrives. On the windswept fields of Hastings, two great armies meet. Imagine the morning sun breaking through a thin veil of fog, illuminating the grassy hills where thousands of warriors stand in tense silence. The sound of armor clinking, the low murmur of soldiers' voices, the distant toll of church bells, all blend into a symphony of anticipation. Horses shift uneasily, nostrils flaring, as riders grip reins tightly. The battlefield is alive, charged with expectation, courage, and fear. The Battle of Hastings begins. Arrows darken the sky like flurries of black leaves in autumn. The clash of swords rings across the hills, a sharp, relentless percussion. Warriors fall, and yet the fight continues, fierce and unyielding. Harold's men, the Anglo-Saxon feud and housecarls, fight with determination, forming shield walls that resist the Norman charge. But William's army is well-trained, disciplined, and patient. Cavalry maneuvers, feigned retreats, and relentless pressure begin to turn the tide. As the sun climbs higher, the battle reaches its tragic climax. King Harold falls, struck, legend says, by an arrow to the eye. and the Anglo-Saxon resistance falters. Chaos spreads across the battlefield, leaving a silence heavy with sorrow and exhaustion. The Norman victory is complete, and William, now known as William the Conqueror, begins the monumental task of reshaping England. Imagine, after the battle, the quiet that descends on the hills. Smoke rises from fires where wounded men are tended. Birds circle overhead, calling softly, as if mourning the loss of so many lives. The landscape bears the scars of war, trampled fields, broken fences, and abandoned weapons. Yet even in this aftermath, life persists. Survivors return to villages, tending to their families and livestock, rebuilding what has been damaged, finding small joys amid the sorrow. William's conquest brings profound change to England. Castles begin to rise across the countryside, like stone sentinels standing guard over towns and villages. Imagine walking past one of these early Norman fortresses. High, sturdy walls, towers reaching toward the sky, gates that creak under heavy wooden beams. Inside, soldiers drill, blacksmiths work, and the Lord administers justice. These castles symbolize not only military strength, but also the imposition of order over a land that had known centuries of localized, fragmented rule. The Normans also transform the governance of England. Feudalism becomes the new structure of society. Land is granted to loyal nobles, who in turn owe military service and allegiance to the king. Villagers and peasants owe labor and tribute to their lords, binding communities in a system of duties and protection. Laws are codified, courts are established, and the influence of the monarchy spreads into every corner of the kingdom. Life is now organized under a centralized authority, reshaping centuries. Old traditions of local autonomy, language and culture are deeply affected. French becomes the language of the elite, while Old English continues among the common folk. Over time, these languages blend, forming the foundation of Middle English. Imagine listening to a conversation in a bustling market, merchants speaking a mix of French and English, exchanging goods and ideas, laughter and bargaining filling the air. This linguistic blending carries the echoes of conquest, adaptation, and cultural fusion that will endure for generations. Religion continues to play a central role. The Normans rebuild and expand churches and cathedrals, introducing architectural innovations that leave a lasting mark. The majestic lines of the Romanesque style, with its rounded arches and towering stone walls, begin to dot the landscape. Monks and clergy continue their work, preserving knowledge, copying manuscripts, and tending to the spiritual needs of the people. Imagine walking through a newly built Norman cathedral, sunlight streaming through high windows, illuminating carved stone figures of saints and angels, the soft murmur of prayers, the flicker of candles, and the faint scent of incense, creating an atmosphere of reverence and calm. The Domesday Book, commissioned by William in 1086, offers a remarkable glimpse into the transformed kingdom. Imagine scholars and scribes meticulously recording every manor, every field, every stream, and every serf across the land. This monumental survey not only demonstrates the Normans' administrative efficiency, but also provides a detailed snapshot of life in 11th century England. It is a testament to human endeavor, to order imposed on a previously fragmented landscape, and to the enduring curiosity and meticulousness of those who sought to understand their world. Yet conquest is never without its hardships. The Norman takeover brings tension, rebellion, and occasional famine. Villages are taxed, lands are redistributed, and resistance is met with force. Imagine the quiet nights in a small village. Families huddle in thatched cottages, listening to the distant watchfires of soldiers, hearts heavy with uncertainty. the wind rustles through the trees, carrying whispers of a past way of life and hopes for a future that is slowly taking shape. Despite these challenges, the Norman Conquest lays the foundations for a New England. Society is more structured, governance more centralized, and culture richer for the blending of Anglo-Saxon and Norman traditions. Architecture, law, language, and governance are reshaped, creating a legacy that endures to this day. The echoes of the conquest are still visible in castles, cathedrals, place names, and even in the rhythm of the English language itself. Imagine walking through a Norman town decades later. The marketplace is alive with merchants from distant lands, selling spices, textiles, and crafted goods. Children play near the riverbanks, while scholars and clerics quietly study in the abbeys. Soldiers patrol the streets, ensuring order, and nobles oversee their estates from imposing manor houses. The land has healed from the scars of battle, yet every stone and path carries the memory of a year that changed everything. And as we leave this chapter of our journey through medieval England, let us pause to reflect on the profound transformation brought by the Norman Conquest. It was a time of courage, ambition, and resilience. Kings and warriors, peasants and scholars, monks and merchants, all played a part in weaving the complex tapestry of history. The land itself seems to remember. The castles, the fields, the rivers, and the villages echo with stories of bravery, loss, adaptation, and enduring hope. The year 1066 stands not merely as a date in a book, but as a living moment in the story of England. It is a reminder that history is shaped by both human ambition and the quiet perseverance of ordinary lives, by battles fought on misty hills, and by the soft footsteps of those who rebuild, restore, and dream. And as we turn toward the next chapter, the life, culture, and daily rhythms of medieval England, we carry with us the legacy of conquest, the enduring spirit of resilience, and the quiet power of human determination. Picture England as it stood in the centuries following the Norman Conquest, a land slowly reshaping itself under the shadow of castles, the authority of kings, and the enduring rhythm of the seasons. Unlike the grand battles and sweeping conquests that dominate history books, this chapter belongs to the people, the farmers, craftsmen, monks, and villagers who lived their lives quietly yet profoundly, creating the heartbeat of medieval society. Imagine walking through a small village in the early morning. Mist rises from the river that curves gently through the fields, catching the first pink rays of sunlight. Smoke drifts lazily from the chimneys of thatched cottages, carrying the earthy scent of burning peat and wood. Chickens cluck and scratch in the yard, while children chase one another through puddles left by the morning dew. The village is alive, not with the roar of kings and armies, but with the gentle, persistent rhythm of human life. In these villages, life revolves around the land. Fields of wheat, barley, and oats stretch across the gentle hillsides. Farmers rise before dawn to tend the soil, guiding oxen as they plow the earth, sow seeds carefully, and water young shoots. Imagine the feeling of damp soil beneath your fingers, the smell of freshly turned earth, mingling with the sweet fragrance of wildflowers that grow along the edges of the fields. Each season brings a different task: planting in spring, nurturing crops in summer, harvesting in autumn, and preparing for the harsh quiet of winter. Villagers live in small, wooden homes with thatched roofs, often clustered around a common green. Inside, the hearth is the heart of the home, where firelight dances on wooden walls, warming families and cooking their simple meals. Smoke rises up the narrow chimney, carrying the scent of porridge, bread, and sometimes roasted meat. Families gather around the fire in the evenings, sharing stories, singing songs, or mending tools and clothing. The rhythm of life is slow but steady, a careful balance between work, community, and rest. Beyond the villages lie towns and market centers where life becomes slightly more bustling. Imagine walking through a town with narrow, winding streets paved with uneven cobblestones. The air is filled with the scent of fresh bread, roasting meat, and the tang of leather from craftsmen's workshops. Markets are vibrant with activity. Merchants display wool, textiles, pottery, and iron tools. Shoppers haggle and barter, their voices rising and falling like music. Children dart between stalls, laughing and chasing one another. Even in the midst of trade and commerce, the town retains a sense of intimacy, where faces are familiar and news travels quickly. Craftsmen and artisans play an essential role in medieval life. Blacksmiths hammer glowing iron into swords, nails, and tools, the rhythmic clang echoing through the streets. Weavers sit at looms, threading fine wool into cloth, while carpenters shape timber into furniture, carts, and the frames of homes. Potters mold clay on spinning wheels, creating vessels that will hold food and drink for generations. These crafts are not only practical, they carry beauty, tradition, and pride, connecting people to the skills of their ancestors. Religion is woven into the very fabric of daily life. Churches and abbeys rise across the countryside, their spires reaching toward the sky. Imagine entering a small village church on a quiet morning. Sunlight streams through narrow stained glass windows, illuminating the stone walls with colored patterns. The scent of incense hangs in the air, mingling with the earthy aroma of the wooden pews. Monks and priests quietly tend to their duties, offering guidance, tending the sick, and preserving the wisdom of sacred texts. The church provides not only spiritual comfort, but also a place of community, education, and care. Monasteries are centers of learning and culture. Imagine the quiet of a stone cloister where monks chant prayers in harmonious rhythm. By candlelight, they copy manuscripts, preserving the knowledge of centuries, religious texts, poetry, medical treatises, and classical works from Rome and Greece. The scratch of the quill on parchment is accompanied by the occasional whisper of reflection, creating an atmosphere of calm and contemplation. These quiet spaces stand in contrast to the outside world, yet they influence it profoundly, nurturing wisdom that shapes generations to come. Life in medieval England is not without hardship. Disease, famine, and unpredictable weather can disrupt the rhythm of daily life. Villagers depend on one another for survival, sharing labor, food, and knowledge. Imagine a winter evening when snow blankets the fields and frost clings to every roof. Families huddle together for warmth, feeding fires with peat and wood. The wind moans through the trees outside, yet inside, life continues with quiet resilience. A child learns to sew, a parent carves wooden utensils, and the family shares a simple meal by the flickering firelight. Even in adversity, there is strength, community, and hope. Education is limited but valued. Children of wealthier families may learn to read, write, and study Latin, preparing for service in the church or court. For most, learning is practical: how to farm, weave, or tend animals. Knowledge is shared orally through songs, stories, and hands-on teaching. Imagine a young boy listening intently as his father teaches him to wield a plow, or a girl carefully watching her mother spin wool at a loom. In these lessons, skills are passed from generation to generation, connecting past, present, and future. Festivals and celebrations punctuate the year, bringing color, music, and joy to daily life. Harvest festivals honor the land's abundance with feasting, dancing, and music. Religious holidays mark sacred moments, bringing communities together in prayer and celebration. Weddings, births, and local fairs provide occasions for gathering, storytelling, and laughter. Imagine a midsummer festival with villagers wearing garlands of flowers, the sound of flutes and drums filling the air, children chasing one another across green fields, and the scent of freshly baked bread mingling with blooming flowers. These moments remind the people of life's beauty, even amidst toil and struggle. Food in medieval England is simple but varied. Villagers grow vegetables, grains, and herbs, raise chickens, pigs, and cows, and gather from forests and rivers. Bread is a staple, often coarse and hearty, while stews simmer with seasonal vegetables and occasionally meat. Cheese, ale, and honey provide nourishment and comfort. Imagine the aroma of a bubbling stew, the warmth of fresh bread in your hands, and the shared pleasure of a family meal after a long day in the fields. Food sustains not only the body, but also the spirit, bringing families together and marking the passage of the seasons. Clothing reflects social status, climate, and practicality. Villagers wear woolen tunics, simple dresses, and cloaks to keep warm. Nobles wear finely dyed fabrics, embroidered with intricate patterns. Leather shoes, belts, and pouches serve both utility and adornment. Imagine the texture of wool on your skin, the weight of a leather belt, or the way a cloak sways as you walk along a country path. Clothing is both protection and identity, reflecting the life and work of the wearer. Trade connects even the most remote villages to distant lands. Goods like salt, spices, and textiles travel along rivers and roads, linking England to Europe and beyond. Merchants, itinerant craftsmen, and travelers bring stories, knowledge, and objects that enrich daily life. Imagine a caravan arriving at a village market, the glint of coins in the sunlight, the chatter of traders from faraway towns, the exotic scents of imported spices mingling with the familiar smells of bread and earth. Trade creates connections, curiosity, and growth, weaving a wider world into the fabric of medieval life. Leisure, though scarce, is valued. Children play simple games, musicians entertain with flutes, harps, and drums, and storytelling preserves legends and history. Imagine an evening by the hearth, where the crackle of fire blends with the voice of a storyteller recounting tales of kings, heroes, and mystical creatures. Through play and story, imagination flourishes, and the world feels larger, richer, and filled with wonder. The land itself shapes the rhythms of life. Rivers provide water and fish. Forests offer timber, game, and berries. Hills and meadows mark boundaries and paths. Villagers learn to read the sky, the seasons, and the land, understanding weather, migration patterns, and the cycles of planting and harvest. Nature is both provider and teacher, demanding respect, observation, and adaptation. Life in medieval England is a delicate balance of work, faith, community, and survival. The rhythms of the seasons, the care of the land, the teachings of elders, and the guidance of the church create a structure within which families, villages, and towns thrive. Imagine the gentle unfolding of a year, spring rains nourishing the fields, summer sunlight ripening the crops, autumn bringing harvest and celebration, winter blanketing the land in quiet reflection. Each day is measured, meaningful, and intertwined with the larger patterns of life. As we leave this chapter, let us pause to feel the heartbeat of medieval England, the slow, steady pulse of daily life, the warmth of hearth and home, the quiet perseverance of ordinary people shaping their world. These lives, though often unrecorded in history books, form the enduring foundation of society, culture, and community. And as we prepare to move into the next chapter, an era of war, plague, and profound transformation, we carry with us the echoes of these villages, towns, and homes, remembering that history is lived not only in battles and kings, but also in the quiet courage, labor, and love of ordinary lives. Imagine England in the 13th century, a land of green rolling hills, dense forests, winding rivers, and small villages. Life continues its familiar rhythms, farmers tending fields, craftsmen shaping wood and iron, children playing near streams, but the shadows of war, disease, and political turmoil begin to loom over the landscape. This is a period of extraordinary challenge, yet also of profound resilience. England stands at a crossroads, its society reshaped by conflict, its people tested by forces beyond their control, and its culture enriched by both hardship and adaptation. The century begins with the reign of kings who seek to consolidate power and impose order. Monarchs such as Henry Roman III strive to strengthen the monarchy, yet their rule is never uncontested. Barons and nobles, seeking to protect their own privileges, demand reforms and rights. The resulting tension gives birth to one of England's most famous documents, the Magna Carta. Imagine the quiet halls of a castle where lords gather, quills scratching parchment as a document is carefully signed. It is a moment of compromise, of negotiation, of shaping a future where law and governance are not the whim of a single ruler, but a framework for society. As the 13th century progresses, the specter of war is never far. Across the English countryside, banners flutter atop castles and fortresses. Soldiers train, sharpen swords, and patrol roads. Knights ride on horseback, clad in armor, preparing for battles that may erupt suddenly. Yet even amidst preparation for conflict, daily life continues. Imagine a village under the watchful gaze of a nearby castle. Villagers tending crops, women weaving cloth, children playing beside the river, all under the quiet tension of knowing that war could descend at any moment. And then comes the Black Death in the mid-14th century, a silent, invisible enemy that sweeps across the land with terrifying speed. Imagine a village in the early morning light. Smoke curls from chimneys, the air is crisp, yet a sense of unease lingers. Families discover neighbors suddenly stricken, fields left untended, markets quieted by fear. The plague moves swiftly, touching every corner of England, leaving sorrow and loss in its wake. Yet amid despair, life endures. Those who survive rebuild, adapt, and find new ways to cultivate the land, preserve knowledge, and care for their communities. The impact of the Black Death is profound. Labor becomes scarce, giving peasants a new sense of leverage and autonomy. Villagers negotiate for fairer wages. Lords must adjust their expectations, and the social fabric of England slowly shifts. Imagine a peasant walking across a sunlit meadow, the air filled with birdsong, aware that life has changed irrevocably, but also filled with cautious hope for a future where survival brings opportunity. Even in tragedy, human resilience and adaptation shine. During this period, war continues to shape the nation. The 100 Years' War with France begins, stretching over decades, with battles fought across the English Channel and in distant lands. Soldiers march over muddy fields, banners snapping in the wind, the sound of hoofbeats and the clash of swords filling the air. Yet not all battles are fought abroad. Internal conflicts, rivalries between nobles, and succession disputes erupt, shaping the destiny of the kingdom. Imagine the quiet villages as distant armies move through, bringing both danger and trade, fear and opportunity. Amidst warfare, daily life continues in its own rhythm. Markets thrive, monasteries preserve knowledge, and festivals bring moments of joy. Imagine a midsummer evening in a bustling town. Merchants display their goods, children play games, minstrels perform tunes on lutes and flutes, and villagers gather to celebrate with singing and dancing. Even in uncertain times, humanity seeks continuity, community, and small pleasures. Religion continues to shape life profoundly. Cathedrals rise to the sky, abbeys maintain libraries, and clergy offer guidance and comfort. Imagine walking through a stone abbey as sunlight filters through stained glass windows, illuminating monks chanting in serene harmony. Despite the chaos of plague and war, the sacred spaces provide stability, solace, and a sense of order in a changing world. Art, literature, and culture flourish alongside hardship. Manuscripts are illuminated with intricate designs, telling stories of kings, saints, and legendary heroes. Minstrels sing of past deeds and moral lessons, passing history orally from one generation to the next. Even in rural villages, folk songs and tales echo, reminding people of the continuity of life and the wisdom of those who came before. Imagine sitting by a hearth as an elder recounts a tale of valor or morality, the firelight casting dancing shadows on the walls, children listening intently, and the rhythm of storytelling linking past to present. The Wars of the Roses in the 15th century bring new turbulence. The houses of Lancaster and York vie for the crown, their banners and symbols appearing across battlefields and towns. Imagine a field at dawn, mist rising over the grass, banners swaying gently, and the distant sound of armored men preparing for combat. These conflicts leave scars on the land, yet also reshape the monarchy, heralding changes that will stabilize England in the years to come. Amidst these challenges, ordinary life persists with remarkable endurance. Farmers cultivate crops, women manage households, children learn practical skills, and villages maintain their traditions. Imagine a winter morning in a small village. Frost clings to rooftops, smoke rises from chimneys, and villagers move quietly through the snow-laden streets, tending animals and preparing for the day. Despite external chaos, the rhythms of work, family, and faith continue, a testament to human perseverance. Trade and economic activity expand during this period, even amidst disruption. Rivers carry goods, roads connect towns, and markets flourish in larger settlements. Wool, cloth, grain, and metalwork move from village to city, creating networks of commerce that link England to Europe and beyond. Imagine a traveling merchant arriving at a town, the smell of spices mingling with the earthy scent of grain, the sound of coins exchanged, and the quiet fascination of villagers seeing objects from distant lands for the first time. Trade becomes a lifeline, enriching culture and fostering connection. Despite war and disease, the natural world continues to shape daily life. Rivers provide fish, forests supply timber and game, and hills and meadows dictate patterns of settlement. Villagers learn to read the signs of weather, the cycles of planting and harvest, and the rhythms of nature itself. Imagine walking through a sunlit meadow in late spring. Wildflowers sway gently, bees hum in the air, a stream glints in the sunlight, and the soft wind carries the fragrance of earth and grass. Life is intertwined with the natural world, a balance of labor, observation, and respect. Education and literacy expand slowly. Monasteries and cathedral schools educate the sons of nobles, clergy, and occasionally wealthy merchants. The knowledge of Latin, scripture, and classical texts grows, while practical knowledge, farming, carpentry, weaving, is passed through apprenticeship and family teaching. Imagine a young scribe bent over parchment in a quiet stone room, quill scratching as he copies a manuscript by candlelight, preserving wisdom for future generations. Despite adversity, moments of joy, creativity, and celebration remain. Festivals, weddings, and religious ceremonies bring communities together. Music, storytelling, and art provide respite from the harsh realities of life, reinforcing shared identity and hope. Imagine a village feast with tables laden with bread, cheese, roasted meat, and ale. People laugh, sing, and dance, their faces illuminated by torchlight, and the simple pleasures of community and fellowship strengthen their spirits. By the end of the 15th century, England has been profoundly transformed. The population has endured plague, famine, and war. The monarchy has been challenged and redefined. Society has adapted, laws have evolved, and culture has deepened. Yet throughout these centuries of turmoil, the people of England display remarkable resilience. They rebuild, adapt, create, and persevere, ensuring that life continues and that knowledge, culture, and traditions endure. As we leave this chapter, let us pause to feel the rhythm of medieval England in these centuries of trial. The echoes of battlefields, the quiet smoke of cottages, the chants of monks, the laughter of children, and the music of festivals all remind us that history is lived not only in great events, but also in daily persistence, courage, and community. Life endures, even amidst war and plague, and the spirit of the people carries England forward toward the dawn of a new era. Picture England in the late 15th century, a land still shaped by centuries of war, plague, and conquest, yet beginning to stir with the first hints of change. The countryside is a patchwork of green fields, dense forests, winding rivers, and quiet villages. Smoke curls from chimneys into pale morning mist, while the soft sound of livestock and the distant clatter of carts moving along cobbled streets create the steady rhythm of daily life. Life is still simple for many, yet the world around them is slowly transforming. The Wars of the Roses, which had marked much of the previous century, come to an end with the rise of Henry Roman VII, founding the Tudor dynasty. Imagine the grandeur of the royal court, banners fluttering in the sunlight, courtiers bowing with deference, and the king walking calmly through halls adorned with tapestries depicting legendary English victories. Stability begins to return, and the monarchy consolidates power, bringing order after decades of conflict. Yet even as the crown asserts itself, the lives of ordinary people continue their quiet rhythm, fields plowed, livestock tended, and families gathering around the hearth. Villages and towns thrive as trade expands and markets flourish. Imagine walking through a bustling market in a town like York or Canterbury. Merchants display vibrant textiles, fine pottery, and imported spices. Children chase one another between stalls. The air is filled with the sense of bread baking, roasting meat, and fresh herbs. Towns grow in importance, providing not only commerce, but also centers of learning, culture, and social interaction. People from villages travel to towns to sell goods, purchase necessities, and exchange news, connecting communities in ways both practical and meaningful. Agriculture remains central to life. Fields are carefully tended, following the cycles of the seasons. Farmers plant and harvest crops, tending livestock and ensuring food for their families and the surrounding communities. Imagine the gentle rhythm of a day in spring, the soil soft beneath your fingers, the scent of freshly turned earth, and the sunlight glinting off young shoots of wheat and barley. Life is shaped by the natural world, by the steady progression of days, and by the labor required to sustain it. Yet this is also a period of change. Advances in technology and knowledge begin to touch daily life. Watermills and windmills become more common, grinding grain efficiently, while improvements in plowing, irrigation, and animal husbandry increase productivity. Imagine a small village where a watermill turns slowly in the river's current, its rhythmic creak a steady companion to the hum of the village. Farmers bring grain to be milled, sharing news and stories, and the hum of progress blends with the timeless cadence of rural life. Education and literacy grow, especially among the emerging middle class. Grammar schools appear in towns, teaching reading, writing, and arithmetic. Wealthy families hire tutors for their children, and monasteries continue their work in preserving texts and fostering learning. Imagine a scholar bent over parchment by candlelight, quill scratching as knowledge is copied and preserved. Knowledge becomes a bridge between the old and the new, connecting generations and shaping the future. Religion remains central but also begins to face challenges. The church continues to guide daily life, overseeing baptisms, marriages, and funerals, while monasteries, abbeys, and cathedrals flourish. Yet murmurs of reform begin to circulate, questioning long-held practices and emphasizing personal faith and direct access to Scripture. Imagine a quiet Sunday morning in a village church, sunlight streaming through stained glass, the soft hum of prayers, the aroma of incense, and a sense of continuity even as new ideas slowly stir within the minds of the faithful. Art and culture blossom during this period. Manuscripts become increasingly ornate, music grows more complex, and architecture begins to show signs of early Renaissance influence. Imagine a cathedral in progress, stonemasons carefully carving intricate designs, scaffolding reaching toward the sky, and artisans painting delicate scenes on walls and ceilings. The combination of skill, patience, and imagination transforms buildings into lasting works of beauty, reflecting the evolving spirit of the age. The exploration of distant lands begins to capture the imagination of English sailors and merchants. Rumors of faraway lands, spices, gold, and knowledge spark curiosity and ambition. Imagine the quiet anticipation in a small port town, wooden ships creaking in the harbor, sails furled, sailors preparing provisions, and merchants dreaming of trade with lands beyond the horizon. The seas promise both danger and opportunity, a metaphor for the broader transition from medieval to early modern England. Daily life continues its steady course amidst these broader transformations. Villagers rise with the sun, tending fields, caring for animals, and preparing food. Women manage households, spin wool, weave cloth, and nurture children. Children learn skills from their parents, gradually preparing to assume the responsibilities of adult life. Imagine a winter morning, frost covering the rooftops, smoke rising from chimneys, the smell of bread baking, and families gathered around the hearth, sharing warmth and stories. Even as the world changes, these rhythms endure, connecting past to present. Trade and commerce flourish further in towns and along rivers. Wool becomes a major export, connecting England to European markets. Craftsmen and merchants grow in importance, providing goods, services, and connections beyond the village. Imagine a town fair, stalls displaying cloth, pottery, and imported spices, the chatter of merchants, the laughter of children, and the steady rhythm of coins exchanging hands. Commerce links communities, spreads ideas, and enriches daily life. Fashion and clothing begin to reflect greater complexity and social distinction. Nobles and wealthy merchants wear elaborately dyed fabrics, while peasants continue with practical woolen tunics, simple dresses, and leather shoes. Imagine the vibrant colors of market day, deep reds, rich blues, and earthy tones mingling in a tapestry of movement and life. Clothing signals identity, status, and occupation, while also providing comfort and protection against the changing seasons. Food remains tied closely to the land. Villagers rely on bread, vegetables, dairy, and occasional meat, while towns have access to imported goods such as spices, sugar, and wine. Meals are communal, reinforcing bonds among family and neighbors. Imagine a long table in a village hall during a harvest festival, bowls of stew steaming in the cool autumn air, bread broken and shared, laughter rising as people celebrate abundance and community. Food nourishes both body and spirit, providing continuity and comfort in an era of change. Warfare continues to influence life, though differently from earlier centuries. Castles remain symbols of power, but the nature of conflict evolves. Gunpowder begins to appear in rudimentary form, and armies incorporate both traditional knights and emerging infantry forces. Imagine a castle atop a hill, banners fluttering, soldiers training in the courtyard, blacksmiths forging weapons, and the quiet vigilance of those tasked with defending both the structure and the surrounding lands. Security remains essential, even as society grows more complex. Despite these challenges, England experiences a slow cultural flowering. Literature, poetry, and music become increasingly sophisticated. Tales of chivalry, romance, and morality circulate, both orally and in manuscripts. Imagine a candlelit chamber where a poet recites verses, the flicker of firelight dancing across attentive faces. Stories entertain, instruct, and inspire, connecting communities across time and space. The natural world continues to frame life. Rivers, forests, meadows, and coastlines provide sustenance, resources, and inspiration. Villagers observe seasonal changes, study the behavior of animals, and adapt to climate shifts. Imagine walking through a spring meadow, wildflowers swaying, bees humming, and sunlight glinting off to laden grass. Nature shapes daily life, teaching patience, observation, and respect for the cycles of the earth. By the dawn of the 16th century, England is poised on the threshold of the Renaissance. Education, art, exploration, and commerce are flourishing. Society has grown more complex, law and governance more structured, and culture richer and more diverse. Yet life for ordinary people continues in its quiet rhythm, anchored in family, faith, and the land. Villages, towns, and cities hum with labor, trade, and celebration, while the echoes of past centuries, plague, conquest, war, and resilience, remain alive in memory and tradition. As we leave the medieval era behind, we carry with us the sights, sounds, and rhythms of daily life. The smoke rising from a thatched cottage, the clatter of a blacksmith's hammer, the soft murmur of prayers, the laughter of children at play, and the slow passage of seasons over fields and forests. England has endured centuries of change, conflict, and challenge, yet its people have persisted, adapted, and shaped a society that will continue to evolve into the modern age. The end of the medieval era is not a moment of sudden transformation, but a gradual unfolding, a blending of tradition and innovation, hardship and hope, stability and curiosity. It is a time when ordinary lives intersect with extraordinary history, when the rhythms of daily labor coexist with grand political and cultural shifts, and when the enduring spirit of humanity ensures that life, culture, and knowledge continue to flourish.